You hear a language you don't recognize, then another, then three more, all at once, layered over each other like a conversation that never quite resolves. Someone else shouting about grain prices in Greek. Someone else is haggling over silk in what sounds like Aramaic. A man brushes past you carrying a wooden crate that smells like cinnamon and something sharper, pepper maybe, or ginger. You can't tell because he's already gone, swallowed by the crowd. The air is thick. Not just with heat, though it's hot Mediterranean sun beating down on limestone and bodies, but with smell, spices, sweat, salt from the harbor, rotting fish from somewhere you can't see, incense burning at a shrine tucked between two merchant stalls, olive oil, leather, dust. You're in the Emporion, the great marketplace of Alexandria. And it's not just a market, it's the reason this city exists. The reason ships from 3 continents converge here. The reason a city of 500,000 people can survive on the edge of a desert with no river running through it. This is where the world comes to trade. And if the Emporion stopped working, if the grain shipments halted, if the merchant guilds collapsed, if the harbor closed, the entire eastern Mediterranean would feel it within a month, maybe less. You're standing near the edge of the Royal Harbor, where the marketplace bleeds into the docks. The water is impossibly blue, dotted with ships, grain haulers from the Nile Delta, merchant vessels from Rhodes and Cyprus, sleek warships with bronze rams, fishing boats unloading the morning catch. The harbor is artificial, dug out, reinforced, expanded over decades until it could hold hundreds of ships at once. This is Alexandria, built by Alexander the Great, inherited by the Ptolemies, grown into the second largest city in the ancient world. And unlike other cities, Rome, Athens, Babylon, Alexandria doesn't grow its own food. It doesn't mine its own resources. It doesn't produce much of anything except one thing: access. Alexandria sits at the intersection of 3 trade routes: the Mediterranean to the north, the Red Sea and Indian Ocean to the east, connected by a canal and overland routes, and the Nile to the south, the highway that brings grain from the breadbasket of Egypt. Everything flows through here: goods, people, ideas, money. And the Emporion is where it all changes hands. What surprised me is how organized it is. You'd expect chaos: 500,000 people, ships arriving at all hours, merchants from a dozen cultures, no shared language, no central authority managing every transaction. But it works. There are sections, zones. The grain market is separate from the spice market. The textile district is on the western side. The slave market, because there is one and ignoring it would be dishonest, is near the southern gate, away from the main flow of traffic. The organization isn't accidental. It's enforced. By merchant guilds, by the royal administration, by tradition, and by the knowledge that if this system breaks, Alexandria starves. You're moving now deeper into the marketplace. The streets here aren't streets. They're more like wide corridors between buildings, covered in places by awnings or wooden beams holding up fabric to block the sun. The ground is limestone worn smooth by a century of foot traffic. Your sandals slap against it, joining the rhythm of 1,000 other footsteps. You pass a stall selling pottery. Amphory mostly, those big clay jars used for transporting wine, oil, grain. They're stacked taller than you, and a man is inspecting one, tapping it with his knuckles, listening for cracks. Next to him, another merchant is selling glass. Not glassware, raw glass. Chunks of it melted and cooled into ingots, ready to be reheated and shaped. Alexandria is famous for glass. The sand here, combined with the fuel from trade routes, makes it one of the few places where glass is cheap enough to export. Further down, you smell bread. A bakery built into the side of a warehouse, ovens roaring, workers pulling out flat loaves and round ones and long ones twisted into shapes you don't recognize. People are buying bread by the armful, not because they're hungry right now, but because bread is currency. You can trade it, pay workers with it. It's stable, portable, and everyone needs it. You stop at a stall selling dried fish. The vendor, a woman, which is more common here than in other cities, is wrapping a purchase in cloth, negotiating in rapid-fire Greek with a customer who keeps gesturing at the scales. There's a tension to the exchange, but it's transactional, not hostile. They agree on a price. Coins change hands. Small silver coins, Ptolemaic drachmas, stamped with the face of a king most people in this market have never seen. You're in the grain district now, and the scale changes. The stalls disappear, replaced by warehouses. Massive stone buildings with narrow windows and iron-reinforced doors. Inside, you can hear the sound of grain being poured, thousands of pounds of it, moved in sacks or baskets or just shoveled loose into sectioned-off storage bays. This is the heart of Alexandria's power. Egypt produces more grain than it can eat. The Nile floods every year, depositing silt, making the land absurdly fertile. Farmers grow wheat and barley in quantities that would be impossible almost anywhere else. And all of it, most of it, flows north, down the river into Alexandria, and then out again on ships bound for the rest of the Mediterranean. Rome buys grain from Alexandria. Athens buys grain from Alexandria. Every city with a harbor and money buys grain from Alexandria because Alexandria controls the supply. The Ptolemaic kings tax it, regulate it, and profit from it. The grain trade is what keeps the dynasty rich. It's what funds the library, the lighthouse, the palaces, the fleet. Without grain, Alexandria is just a city on the edge of a desert. With grain, it's indispensable. But here's the thing. The grain doesn't belong to Alexandria. It belongs to Egypt, to the farmers in the Delta and the Fayum. And the Ptolemies control it by controlling the transportation. The river, the harbor, the warehouses, the scales, the inspectors who certify weights and quality. If you want to ship grain out of Egypt, you go through Alexandria. There's no alternative, and that monopoly creates wealth, staggering wealth, enough to build a city that rivals Rome, that attracts scholars and merchants and artists and exiles from across the known world. You're walking west now toward the Spice District. The crowd thickens, the smells intensify. You catch hints of things you can't quite place, cardamom maybe, cloves, something sweet and resinous that might be frankincense. Spices aren't just flavor, they're preservation, medicine, status. They're light, valuable, easy to transport, and they come from the ends of the earth. There's a merchant sitting cross-legged on a rug, small wooden boxes arranged in front of him. Each box contains a different spice. He's demonstrating, letting potential buyers smell, taste, compare. His assistant is weighing out small amounts on a bronze scale, adjusting the balance with tiny lead weights. Precision matters. Spices are expensive. A few ounces of black pepper might cost as much as a week's wages for a laborer. Next to him, another merchant is selling incense. Frankincense and myrrh brought overland from Arabia or by ship up the Red Sea. Temples buy it. Wealthy families buy it. Embalmers buy it. The demand is constant, and Alexandria is the hub where supply meets demand. You pass a stand selling papyrus. Sheets of it, rolls of it, blank and ready for writing. Papyrus only grows in Egypt in the marshes of the Delta, and Alexandria controls the trade. If you're a scholar in Athens or a bureaucrat in Pergamon and you need something to write on, you buy papyrus from Alexandria. There's no substitute. Parchment exists, but it's expensive and harder to produce at scale. Papyrus is Egypt's other monopoly, and it's almost as lucrative as grain. You're near the textile quarter now, and the noise changes. Less shouting, more negotiation. Fabric is expensive. Transactions take time. You see bolts of linen, Egypt's primary textile, woven from flax grown in the same fields that produce grain. You see wool from Anatolia. Silk from the east, rare and staggeringly expensive, brought overland via routes that pass through Persia and beyond. A merchant is unrolling a length of purple-dyed fabric. Tyrian purple made from sea snails, so labor-intensive that only the very wealthy can afford it. The dye is worth more than the fabric itself. The merchant handles it carefully, almost reverently. The buyer, a well-dressed man, possibly an official or an aristocrat, inspects it, checking for color consistency, evenness of weave. They're speaking in low voices. This isn't a transaction that happens quickly. What strikes me is the quiet confidence of it all. There's no hard sell, no desperation. The merchant knows the fabric is valuable. The buyer knows it's valuable. They're just negotiating how valuable. And underneath that negotiation is an entire supply chain, farmers growing flax, weavers turning it into fabric, dyers processing snails into pigment, sailors transporting it across the Mediterranean, middlemen taking their cuts, guild officials certifying quality. All of it flowing through Alexandria. You're moving toward the harbor again, but this time to the western docks where smaller ships unload, fishing boats, coastal traders. Vessels that don't carry grain or spices but everyday goods, pottery, tools, cheap wine, salted fish, olive oil. This is the market for ordinary people. The goods aren't glamorous, but the volume is massive. A fisherman is selling his catch directly from the boat. Mackerel, sardines, something larger that might be tuna. The fish are fresh, caught this morning, still glistening. A crowd has formed. People are buying, haggling, moving on. The fisherman's assistant is gutting fish on a wooden plank, tossing the guts into the water where gulls are screaming and diving. Next to the fishing boats, a potter is unloading crates. Simple bowls, cups, storage jars, nothing fancy, but functional, cheap, necessary. A tavern owner is inspecting them, picking out the ones without cracks, negotiating a bulk price. The potter agrees. They shake hands. The crates get carried off. This is the unglamorous side of the Emporion. No spices or silk or purple dye. Just the goods that keep a city of 500,000 people fed, hydrated, and functional. And it's just as essential. Because the aristocrats buying silk still need bowls to eat from. The scholars buying papyrus still need fish for dinner. It's midday now and the sun is brutal. The marketplace doesn't slow down. If anything, it intensifies. This is peak trading time. Ships have unloaded. Merchants have set up. Buyers are out in force. The energy is relentless. You're standing near the center of the Emporion, where the main north-south road intersects with the main east-west road. This intersection is the commercial heart of Alexandria, maybe the commercial heart of the Mediterranean, and from here you can see the scale. Thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands, moving, buying, selling, negotiating, transporting, carts loaded with amphorae, porters carrying sacks of grain on their backs. Slaves, because slavery is foundational to this economy, hauling crates, sweeping floors, guarding stalls. Merchants from Egypt, Greece, Judea, Phoenicia, Arabia, Persia, Rome. Languages layering over each other. Coins from a dozen different mints changing hands. And it's all happening simultaneously. The grain market operates independently from the spice market, which operates independently from the textile quarter, which operates independently from the docks. But they're all connected. The grain funds the city attracts merchants. The merchants bring goods. The goods create wealth. The wealth attracts more merchants. It's a cycle that feeds itself, and Alexandria is at the center. Here's the scale shock. Alexandria doesn't just serve Egypt. It serves the Mediterranean. Ships leave this harbor every day bound for Italy, Greece, Anatolia, the Levant, North Africa. They're carrying Egyptian grain, but also Indian spices, Arabian incense, Persian textiles, Greek wine, Phoenician glass. Goods that originated thousands of miles away, passed through dozens of hands, and converged here because Alexandria is the most efficient place to consolidate, redistribute, and tax them. The Ptolemies didn't just build a city, they built a machine. A commercial engine that processes the trade of 3 continents and takes a cut of every transaction. And that cut is what makes Alexandria powerful. Not militarily, Egypt's army is good, but it's not Roman level. Economically, financially, Alexandria is rich because the world needs what flows through it. You're walking south now, away from the harbor toward the city's interior. The marketplace thins out, transitions into residential districts, but even here commerce continues. Small shops built into the ground floors of apartment buildings. Street vendors selling fruit, bread, cooked food. A man sharpening knives on a whetstone, sparks flying. Another repairing sandals. Alexandria is a city that never stops trading. Even outside the Emporion, even in residential neighborhoods, buying and selling is constant. Because in a city this size, with this many people, specialization is essential. You can't grow your own food, weave your own cloth, make your own tools. You buy them from someone who specializes, who bought their materials from someone else, who imported them from somewhere else. The economy is layered, interconnected, fragile in some ways. If the grain shipments stop, if the harbor closes, if war disrupts the trade routes, the whole system wobbles, but resilient in others. Because as long as people need to eat, need to trade, need to connect, Alexandria will have a role. It's late afternoon now. The heat is starting to break. You're back near the Royal Harbor, watching ships prepare to depart. Grain haulers mostly, loaded and riding low in the water. They'll sail west, toward Rome or Greece, carrying Egypt's surplus to cities that can't feed themselves. You think about the fact that this has been happening for over a century. That ships have been leaving this harbor, loaded with grain, every single day, for longer than anyone alive can remember. That entire cities, Rome, Athens, dozens of others, have built their economies around the assumption that Egyptian grain will keep flowing, and it does, because the Ptolemies ensure it, because the Emporion organizes it, because the merchants, the sailors, the warehouse workers, the inspectors, the porters, the bakers, the fishermen, all of them show up and do their part every day because their livelihoods depend on it. But you also think about what happens when it stops, when the dynasty weakens, when Rome decides it wants to control the grain supplied directly, when the trade routes shift, when a rival city offers better terms, lower taxes, easier access. Alexandria's power isn't military. It's not based on walls or legions. It's based on being indispensable, on being the place where the world comes to trade. And that's powerful, but it's also conditional. It's evening now. The marketplace is quieter. Merchants are packing up, covering their goods, closing their stalls. The harbor is still active. Ships don't stop for nightfall, but the frenetic energy of midday has faded. You're standing near the lighthouse, the Pharos, watching the sun drop toward the horizon. The lighthouse is one of the tallest structures in the world, a beacon visible for miles, guiding ships into the harbor. It's a symbol of Alexandria's power, its permanence, its role as the gateway to Egypt and the gateway to the Mediterranean. But standing here, watching the last ships of the day slip out of the harbor, you can't help but wonder, how long can this last? Alexandria thrives because the world needs it. But what happens when the world changes? When new trade routes open? When political power shifts? When the grain runs out or someone else controls it? The city doesn't have an answer. It just keeps trading, keeps loading ships, keeps taxing transactions, keeps assuming that tomorrow will look like today. And maybe it will. The Emporion has been the center of Mediterranean trade for over a century. The system works. The machine runs. But standing here, listening to the sound of waves against the harbor wall and the distant calls of merchants closing up shop, you can feel how much depends on that machine never stopping, how fragile indispensability really is.